Okay, everybody, so let's get started. I have the distinct honor of introducing Dr. Don Thomas, our first featured presenter today. He is a NASA astronaut. He is currently affiliated with Towson University, and I want to make sure I get these missions right. He has flown 4 times on STS-65, STS-70, STS-83, and STS-94. Don?
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. This is a pretty tough crowd to follow, those speakers that I heard this morning. Excellent job, and I commend all of our students on the great work that they did in their experiments, and some of you who will be working, flying your experiments in the future. As you heard, my name is Don Thomas, and I had the amazing opportunity to fly on 4 space shuttle missions, 3 times on Columbia, once on Space Shuttle Discovery. I've spent 44 days up in space. And during that time, I got to orbit the Earth, go all the way around 692 times. So I've seen a lot of our planet, and it is such an incredible experience to see the Earth from 200 miles up, to see sights that I'd only seen in magazines before. And what I'm going to do this morning is just give you a little presentation on like how I became an astronaut, and Achieving Your Dream is the title of it. So let's go with the next slide. Now, I start with this picture. This isn't a picture of me, but it very well could have been me. I was in kindergarten when the first American astronaut launched into space. That was back on May 5th, 1961. And, at my elementary school, they brought us all to the gymnasium. We sat on the ground. I watched a small black and white TV of the launch that day. And as soon as the launch was over, I said to myself, I want to do that. So ever since I was a little boy, I knew what I wanted to do in life. I wanted to be an astronaut, go into space, experience weightlessness, see sunrises and sunsets with my own eyes up there. So I knew what I wanted to do. The problem always is, well, how do you get there? How do you get from point A, I want to do something, to point B, I'm up in space doing it? And I had no idea. As a little kindergarten student, I wasn't sure how to become an astronaut. I didn't know any astronauts. We didn't have any space camps back then. But the one thing I recognized early on was I better work hard and do my best in school, because I knew the competition was going to be really tough, and I thought that's the only chance I'm going to have. So all during school, I always tried to do my best. In elementary school, I was like an average student, got mainly B's, a few C's, a few A's. In middle school, I was working a lot harder, getting A's and B's. And by the time I got to high school, I had nearly straight A's. I had 1 B in high school. And I got those grades not because I'm the smartest guy in the world, but because I worked really, really hard. I have a fraternal twin brother who's like a genius, and he never had to study at all, and he got A's like that. And I was one of those students where I had to read the chapter, read it again, go talk to my teacher, study some more. But in the end, I got it. And I learned to work hard along the way, which was really a key benefit for me later on in my career. After high school, I went on to college. I got my bachelor's degree in physics, one of the sciences. And that's a minimum degree you need to become an astronaut. 4-year bachelor's degree in science, engineering, mathematics in the medical field. But I knew, again, the competition was going to be tough. So I figured I'm going to stay in school and see if I can get my master's degree. So I went to Cornell and got my master's in engineering. And after 2 years, I said, well, I got my master's. Let me stay a few more years and see if I can get my PhD. So I stayed on and got my PhD in material science, like metallurgy, metallurgical engineering, and finally got out of college after about 9.5 years. That's a long time, right? That's a really long time. A lot of studying, a lot of tests, but in the end, it was really worth it for me. After college, I took a job in Princeton, New Jersey, working at Bell Laboratories, doing research on semiconductor materials that go into computer chips and other electronics. And this was in the early 1980s. And my timing was perfect. NASA was just starting to launch the space shuttles at this time. And I had, just got out of school. I had all my degrees, so the timing was perfect. And NASA selects new astronauts every 2 or 3 years. They'll pick a small group of, 10, 15, or 20, depending on their needs. So it was a few years after I got out of college. NASA made an announcement. They said, we're looking for new astronauts. I wrote away, got an application, filled it out, and I sent it in. And I was so full of hope. And nothing happened. I never heard back from NASA that year. It was a few months later, I'm reading the New York Times, and there was a little article in there that said, NASA selects 15 new astronauts. And I thought, well, that's kind of strange. They didn't call me. And I quickly read this article, and my name wasn't on the list. And that's when I realized this was going to be a lot harder than I ever thought it was going to be. I didn't give up. I decided I'd try again, and 2 years later, there was another astronaut selection. I sent my application in again, and this time I heard back from NASA. They sent me a little postcard, and it started with, "Dear Sir and/or Madam." So you know where we're going. It said, "Thank you very much for your interest. We had a lot of good candidates. We didn't select you, but good luck to you in the future." And I looked at that little postcard, and I thought, you know, my grandmother and I had the same chance of becoming an astronaut. It was 0, right? And I decided I needed to do more to get noticed by NASA out there. And I looked into the backgrounds of the people that got selected. They turned me down twice, but I looked into the backgrounds of the people that they did select, and there were some clues there for me. Most of the astronauts that they selected already knew how to fly a plane. Wasn't a requirement to become an astronaut, but it seemed to help a little bit. So I decided, well, I can do that. I took flying lessons, got my private pilot's license and my instrument rating. Most of the astronauts they selected also had some parachute skydiving experience. So I decided, well, I'm going to try that as well. Again, not a requirement, but it seemed to help a little bit. I learned how to scuba dive. I taught a university course. These are all things that seemed to help a little bit. And my strategy was I was hoping that I could do enough of these little things so that for that next astronaut selection, I would be head and shoulders above the other candidates. So I kept working on those things, and a few years later, another astronaut selection, sent my application in again. And this time I got a call from NASA, and they invited me to Houston for a week of medical tests and an interview. And out of the thousands of people that apply for the program from across the country, NASA will whittle it down to 100. They bring you to Houston, and you spend a week there. Most of that week is on an extensive medical exam. And then there's a 1-hour interview. I passed all the medical stuff, went on to the interview. I thought that went really well. And afterwards, I went back to my job in New Jersey and just sat back and waited to see whether I'd made it or not. I was back at my job about a week or so, and some of my friends started calling me up from around the country, and they said, "Hey, Don, the FBI's been calling about you." And let me tell you, if the FBI's ever calling about you, it's either really good or really bad. And in this case, it was really good. NASA was doing a security background check on me, looking into my past. They talked to everybody, every employer that I worked for from high school on, asking what kind of worker was he? Was he reliable? Did he show up to work on time? How did he treat the customers? How did he treat coworkers? They went up and down the streets in every neighborhood that I lived in from high school on, talking to neighbors on either side. You know, hey, what kind of person was Don? You know, was he out partying all the time? You know, what can you tell me? They would stop random people on the street just asking about, you know, did they know me, and asking what kind of person I was. And when I heard this, I thought, this is great news. NASA couldn't possibly be doing this to all 100 people. I thought they must have made their selection, and this is the final check to make sure you're good to go. So I was all excited, and it was about 3 weeks later, I got a call from NASA, and they said, "Don, thank you very much for applying. We had a lot of good candidates. We didn't select you, but good luck in the future." And I hung up the phone, and I was just in shell shock. I thought I was in, and here they turned me down 3 times. First time, no. Second time, no. Third time, they got to know me, interviewed me, and still said no. There's a strong message there from NASA, right? We don't want you. And I decided, I got to give up on this silly dream of mine, right? I gave it my best shot. I really worked hard, did everything that I could, and nobody would fault me for moving on. And I decided, I got to do something else. So I decided I'd go to bed, I'll get up in the morning, and I'll put together a new plan for what I'm going to do with my career after a good night's sleep. So I went to bed, and the next morning, the first thought that popped into my head was, I still want to be an astronaut. And I asked myself, is there any more of these little things that I could do that might increase my chances of getting selected? And again, by looking at the numbers, most of the astronauts that they selected were already working at one of the NASA centers, and I was not. So I decided, I got to get into NASA. So I left my job in New Jersey, drove down to Houston. I got a job with Lockheed Martin, one of the contractors for NASA, working as an engineer on the Space Shuttle program. I did that for 3 years. And then there was another astronaut selection, sent my application in. This is number 4. I made the final cut to the final 100 people for the interview and the medical tests, and that all went well. And then after that, it was about maybe a month later, I got a call from NASA. And this time they said, Don, are you still interested in being an astronaut? Because we'd like to offer you the job. And I said something really intelligent. I said, habita, 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 habita. And I finally got the words yes out of my mouth, and I hung up the phone, and I was jumping up and down, yelling and screaming, because I knew I made it. I'm in. I was 35 years old at that time. I didn't know when I was going to fly in space. It could be 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. There was no mention about when you're going to fly, but I knew I was in the queue. I'm in line to go into space one day. So it was really an exciting moment. And I started a 4-year training program for my first flight. If I could have the next slide. And had the opportunity to fly on 4 space shuttle missions then. This is the crew from my last flight. We've got 2 pilots with the helmets there in the front row that helped us fly the shuttle. On the left-hand side is Colonel James Halsell. He was our commander, was an Air Force test pilot, used to fly the SR-71 Blackbird spy plane. And if you go out to Udvar Hazy, out by Dulles Airport, that SR-71, that's his plane. It's got his name on the side. I always give him a hard time. I said, you know, even the Spirit of St. Louis doesn't have Charles Lindbergh's name on the side, but you have that on yours. On the right-hand side with the helmet is Susan Still. And Susan's a pretty unique individual, only the second woman to pilot the shuttle, and Susan was one of our country's top Navy fighter pilots, so it was a great opportunity for me to fly with her. And then we had 5 science astronauts. We're called mission specialists and payload specialists. Our job was to do the science on board the missions, to deploy satellites, to work the robotic arm if there was a need for that, to do spacewalks. So we each had our little area of specialty on the crew. You probably don't recognize that guy in the far right-hand side, but that's the way I used to look 17 years ago. That was the last time I was in space, was on this mission 17 years ago, back in July 1997. Okay, next. So I flew on 4 shuttle missions, and I got to tell you, on my first flight, I'm inside Space Shuttle Columbia. I'm all strapped in. 6 seconds before liftoff, the 3 engines, like you see over here, start coming up to full power. A lot of shaking and vibration going on. Once the computers say those engines look good, we light our 2 side rockets, our solid rocket boosters, and immediately we take off. And with all this shaking going on, suddenly you feel this push in your back. And laying on your back, when you feel that push, it felt to me like somebody had their hand right in the middle of my back, just pushing me up into the sky. And this picture here is taken like 4 seconds after liftoff. We're going 120 miles an hour already. And I had my helmet on, visor down. Nobody in the world could hear me. And I'm screaming inside my helmet, Yahoo, let's go. Because here was the dream of my life, and it's taking place right in front of my eyes. I had dreamed of this moment since I was 6 years old, and I was 39 years old the first time I went into space. It is such an incredible moment when this dream of your life is taking place right in front of you. And that's what we want our students, to shoot for, to achieve in their lives as well. Okay, next. We lift off. 8.5 minutes later, the engine shut down. Gets perfectly quiet for a second. Then there's a big kaboom. We fire some explosive bolts, and the shuttle separates from our big fuel tank. That thing would fall back into the atmosphere and burn up, and it would leave us, as you see here, with the space shuttle orbiting the Earth. Only takes 8.5 minutes to get to space. That was always amazing to me. It took me almost 8.5 minutes to get in through screening here this morning. And to think in that short period of time, you could be 200 miles above the Earth, and at this point, we're traveling at a speed of nearly 18,000 miles an hour, 5 miles a second. So I don't care where you live in the country or around the world here, if you can travel at those speeds, you'd probably be home in about 45, 50 minutes from here at the max. Okay, next. And one of the greatest things I got to do from space is to look out the window at planet Earth. And such an incredible sight from 200 miles up. I have a map in my hand here in this picture. I'm trying to figure out where we are around planet Earth. And I'm looking out one of the windows towards the tail end of the shuttle. And I took a camera right up to that window in front of me, and I took a picture so you can see exactly what my eyes are seeing. And the next slide will show you what I'm looking at here. And there's the Earth from 200 miles up. And the first time you see this, even if you've seen the movies, IMAX movies, and these images, you still gasp. It's like, oh, wow, look at that, how beautiful. For every astronaut, first look out the window, you just gasp. All the blue in this picture is the Pacific Ocean, the white are puffy clouds, and over on the right-hand side, you see Baja California, and on the far, far right is the west coast of the mainland of Mexico there. Okay, next. This is just one picture of many I'd like to show you, but I want to show you, this is Mount Everest. Dead center of the picture is Mount Everest. And I can stand up here in front of you and tell you without lying, I have seen the top of Mount Everest with my own eyes about 25 times during my career. I call it the lazy man's way to see the top of Mount Everest, right? No climbing involved, just looking out the window as we cruise overhead at 18,000 miles an hour. Okay, next. And then at the end of the mission, it's time to come home. Typically, the shuttle flights were about 2 weeks in duration. We would land back at the Kennedy Space Center, and this is just an hour and a half after landing on my first mission, standing in front of Space Shuttle Columbia. I'm on the left-hand side. The astronaut on the right is Colonel Bob Cabana. He was our commander on the STS-65. He's currently the center director down at the Kennedy Space Center. This was such an amazing moment to stand outside your spaceship and take a look at it. After we took this picture, I turned around and I looked behind me and I saw Columbia, and I thought, what an amazing vehicle this is. You know, this was my house in space for 2 weeks. This thing protected me from the fire re-entry coming through the atmosphere. And one of the next thoughts that popped into my head was, I gotta do this again. You know, it was like a great ride at a theme park, and you get off the roller coaster and you want to run back in line and do it all over again. And I had the opportunity to do this on 4 space shuttle missions. Okay, next. And I want to end with this picture. Do you guys know what this is an image of? This is an image of Mars, right? We're looking ahead to the future, 30 or 40 years from now. We're hoping to send astronauts to the planet Mars. This is an artist's drawing of that day, and you see the landing craft there, and just off to the right, you see a silhouette of two figures stepping off the ship. Those represent the first 2 humans to set foot on planet Mars. And do you know who those astronauts are? It's some of our students here today. I'm way too old to go to Mars. You know, 30, 40 years from now, I'm going to be like 100. NASA's not sending me to Mars. For all the parents here, you're too old to go to Mars. Unfortunately for the teachers, you're too old to go to Mars too. But for our younger students here, they may have the opportunity to undertake these missions. Maybe going to the surface of Mars, orbiting the planet, landing on one of the moons of Mars. We've got missions to asteroids planned for the future. A lot of really amazing opportunities that some of our students here may have the opportunity to participate on. And that's why this is all so important, what we're doing here today. Getting our students interested in math and science and engineering careers, and getting them excited and inspired for some of these future missions. You know, we need this next generation to undertake these missions, 20, 30, 40 years down the road. And so what you're all doing here today, and Jeff, I really commend you on the program. It is so vitally important for our space program and for our future. So with that, I want to thank you guys very much. It's been great talking with you. Thank you very much. I'm going to hang out here till the lunch break, and I've signed some photos. If anybody's interested, I brought those for you. We'll pass those out then as well. So thank you very much.
Don?
Thanks, everybody.
Don, do you have time for a couple of questions?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, first, wonderfully inspirational. Let's thank Dr. Thomas one more time.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
And at the lunch break, he'll be over there at the Living and Working in Space exhibit so that you can go get a signed photograph. Does anybody have, we're running a little ahead. First, let me say, Brookhaven, Mississippi, you are on deck. We have to start Oral 5 at 11:35, but we do have a few minutes for questions. Would anybody like to ask Dr. Thomas a question? One of our PIs.
I met him earlier, Josh.
Hi, I'm Josh, and I would like to know if you had any other dreams when you were a child to be when you grew up?
Yeah, did I have any other dreams? The other dream I had was possibly becoming a football player. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. I was a Cleveland Browns fan, but I was too small for that, so I had to settle for being an astronaut, I tell people. But I was interested in sports when I was a young boy, too. But the astronaut was this thing that never left me. It was always driving me, always keeping me going.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Jim. I'm from Tampa. Don't most of the pilots for the space shuttle come from the military, and what branch do they come from?
Yeah, most of the pilots that fly the shuttle came from the military. That'd be Air Force, Navy, Marine pilots. So they came from all branches of the service, flying the shuttle. And then our mission specialists also, most of them came from the military. I think about 20% of the astronauts were civilians like myself, PhD typically in science, engineering. Astronauts like Sally Ride, you're probably familiar with her, first American woman in space. So about 20% of the astronauts are strict civilians. Most of them come out of the military, though. And equal numbers, Navy, Air Force, Army, we've had Coast Guard. It's a wide range.
Hi, I'm Sophia from Howard County. I was just wondering, did the fear of the dangers of being an astronaut ever make you think twice about it?
That's something you can't escape. You know that there's a risk that you're not going to make it to space, and the numbers for the shuttle turned out to be about 1 in 65. So for my first mission, I wanted to do this, and if there was a 50-50 chance I wouldn't make it home, I think I would have done it. On my second mission, I would have said 50-50. I'd like a little bit better odds than that, but that first time, I had to do it. Every mission, I was aware of the risks. It's something I had thought about. It's in the back of your head. I tell people I was about 20% scared out of my mind and 80% really excited. And it's a little like going on one of those great roller coasters. When the bar comes down, you're a little bit scared, apprehensive, but mainly really excited because you know what's about to come. So I was always a little bit scared during launch. Once we got up there, the engine shut down. I thought, whew, we made it. And I thought for sure, we'd get home safely.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Griffin. I'm from Summerville, South Carolina. I'm just wondering, so you said like 4 years of astronaut training. What was that like?
Yeah, for my first mission, it was 4 years of astronaut training. It's a full-time job. It's kind of like getting another college degree. Some days we're in the classroom, just like you spend your days, Griffin, and learning about the systems of the shuttle, learning about oceanography. They would teach us about astronomy, volcanoes, just everything about the shuttle. We'd spend hundreds of hours in the shuttle simulators, in cockpits, similar to what we have on display here, just training, going through the procedures. We'd practice, getting in and out of the spacesuits and doing spacewalks and swimming pools. We'd fly T-38 jets to get used to high G-forces on us. We flew on zero-gravity airplanes, up and down, just to experience brief moments, 20 seconds at a time, 30 seconds of zero gravity. So every day at work was something new and different. And I almost couldn't believe I was getting paid for this job. It was just so much fun. And, when the weekend would come, you're a little bit relieved you could catch up on your life then. But I love going to work every single day. I think every astronaut would tell you that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, this is the last question.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Liz Kanick from Teachers in Space. I live in New York, but I attended Towson University, and I think I heard you're affiliated with them. Could you tell us, especially for the students, what are you doing at Towson University, and what could high school students look forward to when they get to university?
Okay, I left NASA 7 years ago, it was, to join Towson University. And when I was getting out of NASA, I was looking for an opportunity to work in the education field. And Towson had a position doing STEM outreach. So they wanted to hire somebody to get programs where we go out to elementary, middle, and high schools and try to get young students interested in math, science, engineering careers. And this is exactly what I was looking for when I got out of NASA. And so I joined Towson University to do that. I go out to 70 or 80 schools across Maryland in the Washington, D.C. area here every year, talking to thousands of students every year. For our students looking for college life, it gets a little more challenging. For me, going from high school to university, I had to work really hard in college because the competition just steps up a level there as well. But it's nothing that you guys aren't ready for or won't be ready for in the future, I know.
Okay, let's thank Dr. Thomas one last time.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.